my cat out of the way here. This is our final all-conference chat until the fall. As the newsletter that contained this Zoom link indicated, we're taking a hiatus for July and August, and we'll reconvene after Labor Day. And Sarah Lorbach in our conference office was asking and soliciting all of you, or anyone really, for any ideas about what you'd like our all-conference chats to focus on when we resume them in the fall. So we'll typically, I think, still have a conference update once a month. And I'm sure those of us who are on conference staff will be bringing periodic updates as well. But we've been trying to showcase some different churches, some different ministries from around the conference, from the national setting. Some of those have been better attended than others, some strongly attended, in fact. So we are looking for your ideas of what would make this time valuable to you, and you can share that back to our office via Sarah Lorbach. So this is our monthly all-conference update, and our conference minister, Reverend Molly Carlson, is headed to Ohio, where she has a United Church board meeting and work in our national setting over the next couple of days. But Reverend Murph and Reverend Laws and I are privileged to be here with you, and we're very thrilled that Bob Poor and Santina has moved into the room next to him. So maybe they are now on a date, but he's taking part of that date to bring us an update regarding his work with the conference. So Bob, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Stephanie. So I'm the chair of the FAB committee and chair of the property subcommittee. And so Molly suggested I give kind of an update on where we're at with our financial processes and so on. And I actually tried to put this together in a way that didn't show any like amounts of money. You know, I thought like that would be a good financial brief if we don't actually talk about dollars, we talk about process. Anyway, so I almost did it until I got to the very end. So I've got a couple of examples to show you. But other than that, no money in this thing, right? We're just going to talk about processes. So at Santina's in my old church in Southern California, the Sunday after Christmas, the minister never preached, and I guess a lot of folks don't do that. Didn't preach. He would just take theological questions from the congregation. You know, can God build a rock too big for God to lift? You know, those kinds of questions. I always called that sermon, that service, the Stump the Chump service. And so this is kind of like the Stump the Chump financial update for y'all. So if you have any questions, I'll do a slide or two and I'll stop and I'll go off as a screen share and you just ask me stuff. We can totally play Stump the Chump. I may be a chump. I may not have the answers, but I'll at least take it down and try to get something sensible back to you guys. Okay, so I've really tried to keep this at an executive summary level because I know you guys will just hang up if I get too in the weeds. Anyway, let me share my screen here. Okay, before I get started, how does that look? Is that clear? Can you all read that? Okay, thumbs up. Okay. All right, so financial update for the Illinois Conference of the UCC. Okay, so one more time, I'm the chair of the Finance Administration and Business Committee and chair of the Property Subcommittee. There's my email address too. So if, as you guys, I don't know, think about this or get cut off or whatever it is, and you have questions that you want to ask about the financial process for the conference, feel free to send me a note and I'll do the best I can to get back to you quickly. Okay, so I took over as the chair of the Finance Administration and Business thing back in December. Our first meeting was in January. So just as a quick overview, you'll hear these words a lot, but I'm going to try to give you some objective information to back up what I'm saying. The bottom line for everybody is that as a conference, we are improving the accuracy, transparency, and as part of transparency, I think it's important to talk about clarity because you can be really transparent, but if it's gobbledygook, nobody knows what the heck you're talking about anyway. So transparency and clarity. And then something that I think that is overlooked sometimes, but it is something that's very important, especially for a volunteer organization. I think we're improving the efficiency of our financial processes. And there's more to do. We have a lot more work to do, but it's getting better. When I took over as the chair of SAB at the first meeting back in January, I said, look, you know, I'm a retired military guy. I think in terms of numbers and lists and priorities and things like that. I said, I've got 10 goals and objectives for FAB for 2022. And here they are. First one is manage to a balanced budget. And what I mean there isn't like try to spend less than you bring in. I mean, that's everybody does that, right? The reality was back in 2021, the conference's budgeted income was not balanced to its budgeted expenses. So in other words, even if everything went perfectly according to plan, we would be in a deficit. And I mean, we all deal with deficits occasionally, but to plan to have a deficit is insane. And we can't do that. We've got to manage to a balanced budget. That's what I mean there. Second one is more clear and complete monthly financial reports. I'll get into that later. Complete our transition to the new financial software, ACS Realm. Improve online access to bank accounts and investment accounts for transparency. That's also for efficiency too, because frankly, we were kind of in the dark ages doing a lot of things by mail and FedEx. I'm like, oh my goodness, it's not a way to run a business or or a nonprofit or a religious organization. Improve our check signing process. And I'll get it. I won't talk much about that today. I thought about our drafting a FAB charter based on our bylaws and the financial policies and procedures handbook, updating our conference's gift acceptance policy, starting the discussion with the ACMs and the staff about transitioning to a mileage reimbursable based system rather than owning conference vehicles. Again, that's efficiency, it's simplicity. Again, nothing unilateral, we need to discuss it, but something to look ahead to. Reduce and simplify our property holdings, because bottom line, as a religious organization, we are not in the property management business. And the 10th goal and objective is to increase conference awareness of the importance of OCWM, but also other income streams too. All right, so we had a big picture understanding of that. Actually, I will pause for a second. Let me unshare. Any questions off the top? Okay, I can go faster. I don't know if I can talk slower, but I'll try. All right. Okay. All right. So first off, come on. There we go. All right. We are managing to a balanced budget, right? The expenses we are planning to spend in 2022 equal the income we're planning to receive. Now, will that work out to the penny? No, of course not. But at least we have sensible planning processes in place now. Number 3, to complete the transition to ACS Realm. We completed that in June. There's some more cleanup work to do, to be honest there, but the fact that we've cut over to the new system, from a broader conference perspective, probably the biggest deal about the transition to ACS is the Realm piece of that, and that we have a better way to track the gifts that the local churches provide to the conference, because that was always a little sketchy in my opinion before, but now it's much more automated than it's been. And I can talk more about ACS if you guys want. Improve our online access to bank accounts and investment accounts for transparency. Absolutely, we've done that. There's probably a little more to do, but you'll see the results of some of that as I go through my pitch. And we're improving the check signing processes. In fact, at our FAB meeting this last week, we passed a motion to reduce the number of signatures needed on smaller levels of checks and things like that to improve efficiency. And then the increased conference awareness of the importance of OCWM, that's really the stewardship committee's role, but they brief and update us at every one of our FAB meetings. And I can't stress enough the importance of reminding all of our local churches about their stakeholderness in what we do. Okay, so I talked about the ones that we closed out. Okay, the FAB charter I'm going to back burner, because over the course of this year, there's been discussion at the conference council level about updating our bylaws. Okay, so that's governance, right? And so I don't want to get ahead of any of the governance changes. So I'm just going to kind of, like I said, back burner that one until we get a better sense of where we're going in terms of governance. What? What about it? You did it. Yeah, but that was in 21. Okay. Okay, I went backwards. My wife just distracted me. I'm sorry. Okay, the other one's updating our conference's gift acceptance policy and discussing the transition to mileage reimbursable based system rather than owning vehicles. Frankly, those are lower priorities than getting the numbers right in some of these other areas. So those we will definitely get to, but I'm not sure we're going to necessarily going to get to those in 22. I'm not the most patient guy in the world, but I'm learning. Okay. And I will talk about these other ones here in a second. Okay. So the ninth one was that reduce and simplify our property holdings. Again, as a reminder, we are not in the property management business. So when we took over back in January of 2022, we had 8 total properties that we were tracking. And frankly, the tracking mechanisms weren't very good. We had 8 total properties. We had 2 that we just sold that we were kind of closing out some of the bills related to. We had 2 properties for sale, 1 that was a sale looking ahead, 2 that we had financial interest in, and 1 other property, so 8 total. So since this, as part of this year, what we've done is categorize those properties into those four categories, or 5, including other properties, so that we clearly can think about what our goals and objectives are for that specific property at any given time. Since then, now we're into, as we look to the FAB meeting, which is, the property meeting that's going to happen in July, so next week. I've already put together the package for that. We're down to 5 properties that we're tracking. Okay, so that's good. So we have almost half of what we were originally tracking. No sold properties at the moment. All those actions from the properties previously sold have closed. We have 2 for sale. None looking ahead at the moment. 3 in which we have financial interest in. Okay, I'm going to pause and catch my breath and see if there are any questions on properties.
Question, Jim Powers
Yeah.
from.
Yeah, go ahead.
What's the nature of the properties that we hold?
They're all churches.
And
They're all-
those, and we hold those because of what?
Because of churches in some fashion. This is probably the plight where they failed in some fashion. Either they merged with another church, they simply closed. Aging congregation decided to look elsewhere for their spiritual needs. I will show you the list real quick since you asked. I'm going to share screen and go to, where is my browser? Where the heck is my browser? Oh, here. Okay, hang on. So this is the way we track it, property subcommittee. Okay. So again, 4 categories: sold properties, nothing significant to report there. The 2 that are for sale right now are ones in North Berwyn. And we actually just had an offer on that, although I think that's going to fall through and we're going to need to look for another one. So we track it by name, by address. We have a property subcommittee point of contact, Bill McCarthy, on this particular one. Can you guys see that okay? Thumbs up. Okay. List price, sale price, and then we've got this kind of scrolling list of actions and notes as we go through. So over time, our corporate knowledge builds on these properties rather than losing knowledge about those. Second property for sale is St. John's United Church of Christ up in Evanston. I'll just go quickly through it. You don't need to read all my insane notes. The 3 that we have financial interest in are the Watson Park Namaste Church, Maranatha Evangelical Pentecostal Church in Parsonage. Why do we have financial interest in an evangelical church? It's because we own half of the mortgage on that. They're paying us a mortgage on that property. First United Church of Christ in Joliet. We're going to be talking about that church on Tuesday, and no other churches. Jim, does that help?
Yes, it does. Second
Okay.
question, as part of, once a church is sold, where do the proceeds from those sales go? To what part of the budget?
So it a little bit depends on what the agreement is with the church when we, the conference, accept that church. Okay, so there can be some different things there. But in general, if you hold off on that question, you'll see where it goes now in a couple of slides. Okay, in short, it goes, I don't want to put you off though. It goes into an investment account, and I'll show you that investment account in a minute. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Other questions on property?
Yeah, I guess because I'm new enough to this stuff, I don't really know the answer to this question. What is the difference between the properties we're essentially holding for sale? And then a couple of these properties where you're talking about us having an interest in them? Or I am assuming we're not selling them, or can you
Right.
clarify? Maybe I'm not
That's
answering
that,
the question.
no,
clearly.
that's exactly it. You kind of answered your own question. So if we have a financial interest in a church, it depends. We may hold the deed, but we're not selling it. Or more likely, the local church still holds the deed, but in some fashion, we are helping them financially. So as I said, we have the 3 churches now. I'll just go through them real quick with you. Let me share the screen again. Okay, let me go back up to that. Okay, so there, like I said, there's 3. So the Namaste Church was a new church start nearly 10 years ago. That's Reverend Pagan Banks's church. So we do not hold the deed on that, but we're paying the insurance on that church. We're looking to update that relationship now through a covenantal agreement we've drafted and is being reviewed right now. And so more to follow at future conference council meetings and so on as that works out. So on this one, again, it's a new start that the powers that be before me agreed to pay the insurance and help out. There was a LEAP grant, some other things back in the day. Maranatha Evangelical Pentecostal Church in Parsonage is not associated with the UCC other than when we listed this church for $125,000. They were interested in buying it. It's in Malta. They had enough to pay $62,500. The other $62,500 that they couldn't come up with, we basically are the mortgagee on that. So they're paying us checks every month, and paying down what they owe us. The last one is the church in Joliet, First United Church of Christ in Joliet. We're paying the insurance on this church. We do hold the deed on this church, but at this point, we're still in the process of trying to reinvigorate that congregation. So we're not actively trying to sell it. Other property questions? That was a great question, by the way. Okay, I'll keep going. Let's see here. Okay, so that's reducing and simplifying our property holding. So I believe at this point, really, we have done that and continue to try to be more efficient in our managing of those properties. Hang on, I just goofed this up. Hang on. There we go. Okay, the number 2 goal and objective for 22 that I showed on there was more clear and complete monthly financial reports. I took the word monthly out just to fit it on the slide. So more clear and complete financial reports. And what I'd had on there back in January was that included all properties, all investments, all bank accounts, a clear delineation of restricted, designated, and undesignated funds. It didn't occur to me at the time when I put that out there is the criticality of insurance to the conference and making sure we have a clear and transparent understanding of our insurance requirements across the conference. So I'll show you that in a second. And then the other thing I realized is that undesignated should really be unrestricted in the terminology that the conference uses. So anyway, so I have a goal. Some of the language is a little outdated. Okay, so in terms of insurance, so for all of you guys listening, here's what you probably need to know. We have 4 separate insurance insurance policies. Thank you. Insurance policies in the conference. The first is for those properties that I mentioned that we're either trying to sell, we've sold and haven't closed, or we have a financial interest in. And that's that property insurance with the insurance board. This first list here. There's 6, as I said, 6 properties on that today. What you see here is the blue are changes from the last time I briefed the property committee. So by accurately tracking this, we don't have to go through every single detailed step each meeting. We can be more efficient by just focusing on the changes. So the last change was adding Evanston to our property policy. That's one. Second property policy is for the camp properties. Okay, if you're interested, what is that worth? $8.1 million. We pay $64,000 a year on insurance on the camps. Okay, then I'll stop after I go through all the insurance and see if there's any questions about insurance. Okay, we have insurance on the vehicles owned by the conference. There's 4 of those today. There's a sedan, a Ford sedan, a sport utility vehicle, a Chevy sedan, and a sport utility vehicle. The last one, and we've got the drivers all listed and so on. And the last 4th insurance policy we have is for the camp vehicles. There's a Silverado, a Chevy pickup at Tower Hill, and a John Deere Gator. And again, you can see what the premiums are and so on. So to track that, and most importantly, have ability to cross communicate across the various committees that we have. You know, hey, Tower Hill needs a new vehicle. Oh, they bought a new vehicle. Oh, did we update the insurance? How do we do that? That's getting us to the second level sort of financial processes, ensuring that we have good cross communications across the various committees so we know what we're doing. I'll pause. Any questions about insurance? Okay.
Yeah, Bob, this is Mark Binder.
Yeah, hi, Mark.
When you say, I just wanted to go back to when you said we're paying $64,000 on the camps. Is that coming from camp budget or conference budget? I thought those things were now, I thought all camp expenses were now under camp budget, not conference budget.
You know, that's a great question, and I don't want to mislead you. I'm going to jot that down. I'll send a note to you. And if anybody's interested in what that answer is, just send me an email. Again, it's rpour@rocketmail.com. Mark, I'll send you a note, okay?
Thanks.
Yeah, that is a good question. I'm just jotting it down, insurance on camps. Got it. Okay. Any other questions about insurance?
I mean, because ultimately, if the conference is ending up paying the $64,000 and the camps aren't self-sufficient.
Right, exactly. And part of what Santina prompted me about the financial handbook that we put together, there's language in there about the goal getting, our goal is to get our camps to be completely self-sufficient, right? So not draining conference resources in any way whatsoever, other than volunteers. Okay, all right, so that's insurance. The next is the investment executive summary, right? This is a way for us to track the trends on the various investments we have. We have a total of 18 UCF investment funds with total net worth at the end of May of $2,613,873.07. Where you see the yellow, Jim, that's the sold properties fund. That's where we're putting the money from the proceeds of these properties that we sell. So as of the end of May, we had $291,235.96 in that fund. At this point, all of the other funds are the language and the details about what we can do with that money are explicitly written down. Okay, the one exception is this one, and you know, which we want to get that delineated more clearly. But it's also not bad to have a little bit of flexibility on that money. So at this point, we have no formal documented role for that money yet, but other than probably be property related. So that's something we need to work on. So let me pause for a second. I'll go back to the first. I went quickly because I want to answer Jim's question. So here are all the funds, right? There's the UCC Trust Fund. Again, these are all in the United Church funds, the council directed fund. There's the Leonhardt, there's the Baylor Fund, the Tower Hill Fund, Pilgrim Park Capital Contributions, the Lilly Grant, Teapert, Tut Hill, Leopard, Schmidt, General Operating Endowment, Slater, Heinberger, Harding, Rice, ODM Scholarship Fund, sold properties that we just talked about. There's a Franzen Pilgrim Park Renewable Energy Facilities Fund and a Franzen Continuity Fund. Those are both new. That's why if you look at 16, 17, and 18, there's a zero amount for the 1st of January. They didn't exist yet. So those 3 funds are something that we've done here while I've been chair. Okay, I'll pause for a second. Any questions about investments?
Question.
So Bob, oh, sorry.
I'll get you, Stephanie. Go ahead, Jim.
I was going to ask in the listing of the funds, I happen to be affiliated with the Clergy Assistance Fund. Where is the Clergy Assistance Fund designated within? Is it within the investment funds, or where is it noted within the conference financials?
Yeah, I believe that'll show up in the restricted funds. I will get to that shortly. So you're a wonderful straight man taking me to future things I'm going to hit on here. Okay, so I'll get to that.
Thank you.
All right, good. Stephanie? Stephanie, did you have something?
I think you're about to answer my question in your next few slides, so I'll take.
Okay, if you want to write it down on a piece of paper and then at the end hold it up. Oh, yes, I did answer that. All right, whatever you want to do. Okay, any other questions about investments? I'll kind of leave one last thing there. Just, you know, it's wonderful to have investments, but you have to take a long-term view. You'll notice that the bulk of the funds, like 13, 14, 15 that you see there, they've gone down in valuation this year because of market fluctuation. So they're all down about 12%. So not ideal, but over the long term, my expectation is that that money will recover and grow beyond that.
And those are considered our unrestricted funds?
No, these are, that's a really good question. Essentially, these are restricted funds. A couple are not. Right, and how we tell, that's a finer point that as I was putting this together, I'm like, how do I describe that? I don't believe the UCC Trust Fund, the council directed fund, is restricted in the way we generally use the word directed. Number one there. Similarly, I don't think number 10 is restricted in the way we generally think about restricted funds. The other ones are. So again, so we've got these 18 investment funds with real clear usage rules, with the exception of 16, which we're maintaining some flexibility on. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're all restricted. I hope that helps. I'll show you restricted funds in a second, though. That'll come up. Okay, so then the other part was in the clear monthly reports is showing clear balances in our, not only in our investments and so on, but also in our bank accounts. And we're doing that now using this the ACS software. So for example, at the end of May, there it is, right? We have 5, sorry, it's a little blurry. I did a snippet thing to be able to blow it up to show you guys. But the conference has 5 bank accounts, general operating checking account. The fifth third is the account that we use for the credit cards held by and large by staff. North Berwyn checking, which relates to that North Berwyn church that we're selling, and then 2 TPERC accounts for a total of about $187,000 in those accounts as of the end of May. I'll pause for a second, see if there's any questions about bank accounts. Okay, good. We all have them, so we all understand them. That's good stuff. Okay, next slide. Okay, so clear delineation of restricted, designated, and undesignated funds. So I realize that's really small. And again, I was trying to do this whole presentation without actually showing any money amounts. I thought that would have been kind of interesting. Here are some of the restricted accounts. Okay, we have 2 kinds of restricted accounts. Temporary restricted, for a given purpose, for a given amount of time, and then permanent restricted accounts. And that's really where the investments are, Jim, but not all of the investments we have are necessarily permanent restricted accounts, right? So what are these restricted things? I'm not sure if you guys can all read that, but there's national directed offerings. There's resources that are directed to specified agencies. There's conference ministries. There's insurance claims not yet expended, board designated funds, and so on. So yeah, that's the temporary restricted. The permanent restricted are here. And these are almost exactly lining up to those investment funds that we saw in that earlier thing. I didn't distinguish on the investment funds whether it was restricted or not, because I just want to track it. I want to track the trends of that money. But you can see there. So it goes from Baylor down to the TPERC Lilly Grant money. Okay, that's restricted funds. I will pause for a second, see if there's any questions about that. Jim?
Back to my original question about the
Yep.
clergy assistance fund.
Oh, yes, great, hang on. Where is that? There it is, okay, let me share so you can see what I'm looking at. Hang on. Okay, so let's see. I'm looking for it. I'm not seeing it right off the top. So one of the funds, and I'm sorry, I almost need to ask the treasurer, one of the funds that we have, we moved from conference management to a committee management. That may be the one. I will check, Jim, and get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you.
And it was the ministerial, I think that is the one we moved. Is that the one that Doug helps manage? Jim, do you know?
I do not know.
Okay, all right. Okay, I'll take it for action. Give me a second here. Jim Powers. Okay. Okay, so we did restricted funds. Okay, then unrestricted funds. What are those? Y'all are still seeing this, correct? Okay, so that's what you can see there, right? General operating fund, that sold property fund as of right now, that doesn't have a restricted purpose to it yet. Tower Hill, LEAP, and so on down the list. Now, some of this will clean up a little bit and change, I expect, now that we have all this data in ACS. So this was the first month we've been able to see all this data in the new financial software. So anyway, there's unrestricted. And then I'll just end with, so I hope you're getting a sense, and I hope I didn't rush this or go too much in the weeds, but I'm trying to show you some specific ways we're improving accuracy, transparency, and clarity, and the efficiency of our financial processes. So let me stop there. We can go back to Stump the Chump. Other questions you guys have about financial processes that we have? Stephanie, over to you, I think. Everybody looks a little stunned.
Well, I can only speak for myself, but I've served in ministry in the Illinois Conference for 25 years, and I just think this is an unprecedented level of orderliness. And that's not a comment on what was done before. It's just a giving thanks for what has been done and for the effort you all have put into this. And maybe it was in order, but maybe it just wasn't shared with as much clarity, to your point. So I'm just kind of blown away and really, really thankful for the seriousness and the sacred work that you all have undertaken to manage all of this on our behalf.
So I think what we're going to end up doing is we kind of have either like executive summary stuff or like really in the weeds. It's like so detailed. It's hard to kind of figure out what the story is there. And I think we're going to need to do that for the general operating fund. I wanted to get those other things done because I could tell that it was a little chaotic. I'm like, all right, we got to figure out, we got to be clear on our investments. We need to be able to show on one piece of paper, here's what's going on. We need to be able to do that with insurance. Otherwise, we're always going back to scratch, and it's really inefficient. It's really, we waste a lot of people's time if we're not clear. I think I'm glad that we're now kind of getting that next step. It's like, well, we have reports on the general operating fund, but they're not as clear as we'd like. Like, that's good. That means we're advancing as an organization. We're progressing. We're getting better. So,
Bob?
Ken?
Okay, go ahead, Jim.
Oh, go ahead, Jim.
It was just a final comment to compliment you on the progress that you have made in terms of those, 3-4 goals. You're to be commended for that. So compliments to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's kind of you. Ken?
Yeah, when you transitioned into ACS, how many people has it taken to administer this type of mechanized?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there's different levels of access in ACS. So the people that are really crunching the numbers are our accountant. Okay, that's Keith Hoyos Clark and his team. There's a couple folks there. And then in the office, Lynn is doing a certain amount of access and review and updates and so on as part of her position. The treasurer is certainly overlooking data in there too. Christine Vesley is doing that. I look at it occasionally, but honestly, I'm trying to be more of an orchestrator than a weeds guy, you know, because I think it's a better use of what I do, because I'm so impatient that I could really alienate somebody. And Stephanie, you may know better than I do if other folks on the staff are going in there. I don't know if Naomi's going in for credit card stuff or something. I don't really know.
It's mostly Lynn, and I think she deserves a lot of thanks, along with Keith, for, you know, doing a lot of the heavy lifting on the implementation and the transfer.
Yeah, so when you do a switch from one program to another, there's always, like, in the weeds, cleanup that needs to happen. But the important thing is we've already greatly simplified and our processes and improved our transparency. We went from something like 800 line items in the old system to just over 300. So we cut that down by about half, that's a big deal, right? And there are still a couple of things I'm like, what is that? But you know, we'll work through that. And I think by the end of the year, we can say not only have we made the transition, but it's significantly improved our processes as part of that. Other questions?
This may be a governance question, but in terms of that money that's sitting in the proceeds from the properties, essentially, I can't remember what that fund is called, which is not directed or restricted at this point in my understanding. I mean, it's gladly sitting there, hopefully someday soon earning interest again.
Right.
But is there any discussion yet about where those funds might be directed, or whether that might become the seed money for a general endowment fund? Or, you know, I'm just wondering, like, what the ideas might be.
That's a really good question, and we're noodling around on that a little bit, but nothing specific yet. At this point, we've not been through this like a whole year yet, right? So there are expenses, property related expenses that come up based on those properties that we're tracking or have financial interest in, right? For example, that church in Joliet needs a new roof. Like, so where's that money going to come from? Well, it's perfect to come from that, right? You know, but should it be used for, like, down the road, you know, future church new starts? I'm very comfortable being married to a minister, not trying to be ministerial myself, but rather being supportive of whatever the ministerial mission is. So I really try not to ever comment on that, but rather, oh, this is the vision, this is the mission. Okay, I can help you fund that, or tell you that's a bad idea from a financial perspective because of this, right? So I'm comfortable, like, understanding, you know, when I'm getting out of my lane in the road.
Thank you very much.
Harriet, did you have a question? I saw your hand up earlier. Sorry.
Well, I had a comment and but a bridge away from the finance. So I don't know if that's the subject. Stephanie talked about, well, as we've transitioned into Realm, you set up a structure that works. And you've given a really good clear of the dollars and how the dollars are working. But I'm also looking at what I'm thinking about is the structure of our governance and how our teams and committees work and what structure we're using. It seems like we are not in a 21st century, second decade of the 21st century, that we've got a structure that works for the 50s, the churches of the 50s. And what does that call upon us to do? Is it time to, you know, suspend the Constitution for a certain number of times, to decide that we establish a covenantal relationship with, and then standing rules? So, I don't know how your nominating committees are in your other associations and in the conference, and how many yeses you get when you are filling your committees. So I said it wasn't going to be long, of course. That's my question. We got dollars and cents now. How do we get non-staff functioning and structure?
That's a great question. So part of, I think, this is not advertisement for me to be on the governance team. I don't want to do that because somebody might die, right? But I think we need to do some work on what lens through which we're looking at the changes in governance, right?
Yes.
So what are the measures of effectiveness? Like for me, I'm an old military guy, right? So like the number one thing I would be looking at in governance is efficiency. Are the committees too big? Do we need all these voices? But somebody else, and I don't mean that somebody else's point of view is in any way lesser than mine or not accurate or anything. It's just different, right? Is like, what about diversity? What about other voices? I get that. That's important, right? So, but how do you kind of make sure everybody's equities and perspectives and priorities are accounted for as you look ahead? That's not easy.
No. And that's almost at a higher level or a closer look at what we're getting to in terms of functioning, because the constitutions are our preferred level of volunteers, and what is our actual level of volunteers.
Yeah, right.
I would break in and just, if you haven't heard, at the last conference council meeting, the conference council voted as part of a series of goals that a book, my computer keeps dying on me here, called Rethinking Board Leadership and Shifting Conference Culture, Building and Relationships by Dan Hoskins, is going to be a study guidebook for that process.
Yeah, that makes sense, Mark. To me, another way to look at that broader challenge is, I'm a big Myers-Briggs guy, right? So if you think about all of the ministers and then the volunteers and kind of fundamentally potentially having some different Myers-Briggs personalities, but then you merge that together and then you have an organizational Myers-Briggs personality, based on that, what are the strengths and weaknesses of the conference at large? I mean, that's master's level leadership kinds of questions to ask.
Yeah.
I used to be an ENTJ, and then I married Santine. Now I'm an ENTP. So I went from being not Hitler. That's terrible. Napoleon. Sorry, from being Napoleon to a brainstormer. It's all good. I'm an ENTJ when I'm on camera. Stephanie, what else?
What?
I'm about to type the name of Dan Hotchkiss's book in the chat if anyone's interested. I used it in a prior ministry setting, and I do think it's really valuable, whatever context you're working in the church.
Don't want to read it. Okay, we got a couple of faithful servants holding it up. That's really nice.
So, what are some other thoughts on it? Am I out in the weeds in this? Kind of like, sometimes I do get lost in the weeds.
So I like strategic planning, and so I think in terms of whatever the governance thing is going to turn into, I do think that needs to probably happen up front, and think about what the goals and objectives are for the updated governance. Is efficiency important? Yes. Is many voices being heard important? Yes. Okay, what does that look like? Is what do we do about the aging congregations that we have that maybe are less able to lead or more able to lead, or just what are we looking for? What is that visioning? What does that thing look like?
Right. Well, not only aging congregations, but the committee members. I thought at our last association meeting that, this is not a time to be in our nation to be a timid Christian, but we've got the octogenarians leading, and not only octogenarians, but a lot of them ready to step. I remember hearing step back so others can step forward, and maybe there is some of that. It's easier to step back when you see someone stepping forward. So maybe that's a chicken and egg kind of thing. But
And some of that is just, again, it kind of goes back to visioning, somebody new comes in and doesn't do it the same way it was done in the past. I always comment to Santina, you can see a church is in trouble when the measure of effectiveness of a given event is how close it is to being exactly like it has always been done for the last 50 years. I'm like, well, that's a terrible MOE, right?
exactly. Yeah. It's a wonderful article on Christian Century about turning out, let's just say it's the dinner or the auction or the rummage sale to the younger people. And they of course did it differently. They did it kind of digitally, and the method was different. Well, yeah, we definitely have to step back. I mean, that was really.
Santina coordinated a bake sale for the youth group at our church, and the youth group wanted to send half the proceeds to victims in the Ukraine. Well, if it had been left to me, there's no way we would have done that. But I'm like, it's a pretty good idea. It's just different, right? So. Well, other questions for me? If y'all want to come on to FAB or the property subcommittee, it's a bag of laughs, let me tell you.
Thank you so much. If I could join, I would. You actually make it sound really fun. So thank you very much. And thank you everyone for gathering with us and for your concern for our mutual work and your commitment to it. And a reminder that we are taking the rest of the summer at Sabbath and leisure, and then we will reconvene, I believe, that Wednesday following Labor Day. But you can watch your newsletters and your communications for more news of that. And you can propose any topics for these chats that you might like to see us discuss, in addition to some of the kind of regular business and updating items that we're bringing to you. So if anyone has anything else, Harriet, for the good of the group.
Yeah, I have an announcement. Maybe Reverend Terrell will underline it. Restorative Church at Chicago Theological Seminary, July 11th. Really looking at, again, getting a functional communicating church. People listen. Aha. I think I heard Bob Poor talk about our field of vision, and there's our field of vision, and sometimes it's our field of listening, how we listen or how we speak that makes a difference too.
Reverend Murphy, are you wanting to share something with us?
While we're waiting for him, Stephanie.
Yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
I've had some requests for the video of the presentation that was done last Wednesday night by Jason Moore on Both And. That was the title on hybrid worship.
Oh, yeah.
And I expect to get the permission and access to that in the next few days. We haven't received it yet. And we had I didn't realize that there were a couple of watch parties going on. So there were 22 people that I could see, and 35 or so actually participating. So it was a good turnout.
Okay, can I share this announcement? piggybacking from Harriet. Thank you.
Please, yeah.
The 8th annual National Association for Community and Restorative Justice Conference is next week, July 6th through the 9th at the Hyatt Regency in Chicago. And then following, like Harriet was saying, is an event that's being held at Chicago Theological Seminary, which we really would like for many people here to attend as possible. This is an in-person event. And the topic is restorative church, engaging the wisdom of our faith traditions and science to reclaim our call to be peacemakers. And one of the things that when we do talk about restorative justice, and we claim to be a restorative justice church, one of the things we really need to do is look at our own backyard and make sure that many of our ministries and many of the committees within our church are operating at a level where we are embracing and loving one another and not at conflict. Well, this helps to restore those relationships in the church that may have been broken. This helps to understand what it means to be a restorative church. And so we're looking at using restorative justice principles in order to restore relationships within the church. The cost is $40. It includes a lunch. It goes from 9 o'clock to 3 on Monday, July 11th. We are seeking those who are interested. Please register soon. Registration will be closing late next week. And so we want to really get as many people who are interested in understanding how to utilize restorative justice principles within our church so that we can really be about God's business and doing the ministry God is calling the church to do. And so you can find a link to this conference on the ilucc.org. It also appeared in the e-blast, or if you're interested and can't find it anywhere, please feel free to reach out to me and I will make sure that you can get registered and that you can attend. We really love to see your face in the place.
Excellent. Thank you, Reverend Murph. And please, anyone, if you need further information, I think you can direct it there. And the Illinois Conference website, as Harriet says, has a link to the registration. Should be an empowering and really enriching time. So thank you all. I'm going to stop the recording, or maybe it already stopped because it timed out. No, here. I think.